Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 9, Episode 6, The Merv Griffin Show. Hello everyone. I hope you're all doing fantastic. It's been a week. I hope my voice doesn't sound too gravelly. But I've been doing a lot of talking this week. It's all good. I mean, I've been doing a lot of acting, which is, of course, my favorite thing to do. I've been filming a feature film. I also had a teleprompter gig this week. Today I have my Denver Art Museum show. So it's just been a lot of chatty chats. And again, I'm not going to complain because it's acting and it's what I love to do. The teleprompter gig, I'm always so relieved after those are done. It's a lot of pressure to do those because it's like a one-person show, right? Like I'm the one that's setting the pace. If I'm making mistakes, then it slows everything down. So I always feel a lot of pressure on those shoots, but thankfully it was a really supportive room. The person who was with the company for which these videos were for, she was thrilled with my performance and really appreciated all the preparation I had done. So it was all in all really good, but I definitely got in my car after we were done and just took a huge, deep breath of a couple things, relief and just gratitude. I'm like, I'm so glad when these things go well because reading off a teleprompter, you'd be surprised. For doing that 4 hours straight, it takes a toll on you. It's very draining. Anyway, so this is all to say that I'm really suffering. No, just kidding. Very happy for all the work I've been getting recently, and I will never, ever complain about too much acting. Who would do that? Well, maybe people who don't want to act, but that's not me. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this episode. The synopsis for The Merv Griffin Show is as follows. Kramer discovers the discarded set for The Merv Griffin Show and puts it in his apartment. George runs over pigeons in his car, incurring the wrath of his new girlfriend. Jerry drugs his girlfriend so he can secretly play with her vintage toys, while Elaine is bothered by a coworker who is a sidler. This episode was written by Bruce Eric Kaplan. Okay, we start on the street. Kramer and Jerry are walking, and Jerry is a little bit annoyed because Kramer borrowed his blender. They get into this whole Cain and Abel chat. It's very uninteresting, but bottom line, Kramer broke Jerry's blender because he was trying to make gravel. They walk up on this dumpster and Kramer recognizes these large pieces in the garbage and he says, this is the set from the old Merv Griffin show. He proceeds to climb in. He's so excited about it. And Jerry's like, come on, get out of there. Kramer says, no, you go ahead. I'm not finished taking this in. He finds a cigar buried underneath everything. Hey, Merv Griffin cigar. Jerry's like, okay, I'm leaving. Next, we're in George's car. He's driving with his girlfriend, Miranda. He tells her he spilled a smoothie in the car a few days ago. You can't smell it, can you? And she looks at him and says, banana. George is so surprised. Right. She tells him to watch out for the pigeons that are up ahead in the road. Oh, they'll fly away. You really smell banana? He's so bothered by this. Then we hear a bump and a bunch of feathers flying. Oh my God, she says. He clearly ran over the pigeons. And George's response is, so where are we eating? The actress here is Arabella Field. She plays the girlfriend Miranda. She has also appeared in many shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, American Horror Story, among others. And I don't mind her. I think the character is totally insufferable and isn't given much that's appealing, but she does well with what she has to play with. I do enjoy the delivery of banana. It's a really fun choice. Like, you dumbass, stop being so smug about how well you cleaned that smoothie spill. All right, next we're in Jerry's girlfriend's apartment. Her name is Celia. They're entering and he's joking with her, trying to convince her that there was a guy who invented garnish named Joseph Garnish. Jerry sees shelves of toys across the room and he's mesmerized. She tells him how she inherited it from her collector father after he died from a long, painful bout with Super Bowl. Jerry's just so overtaken with these toys. He also sees the original G.I. Joe with the full frogman suit. Jerry wants to play with the toys, but she says, no, they're priceless. They've never been played with. He says, I just want to touch them a little. I said no. Now come here. She starts kissing him, but he's got his eyes on all the toys. The actress here is Julia Pennington, who plays Celia. She's also appeared in He's Just Not That Into You, Dharma and Greg, and Jag. It looks like she's not acting anymore, but I did a little more research. Big old Google search, guys. You're welcome. I really dig deep. She owns her own vodka company called Hira the Dog Vodka, and she's also heavily involved in animal rescue in LA. In fact, the animal rescuing came before the vodka company, and I think she's pretty good at playing Celia. I think she's a bit stiff, if I'm being honest, but definitely fits the profile of Jerry dating incredibly gorgeous women. Next, we're in the Peterman offices. Elaine is in the break room. She's making herself a cup of coffee when she turns around and gets startled by this new coworker. He introduces himself as Lou Filerman. Getting startled causes her to spill her coffee on the sleeve of her blazer. Lou walks out and Walter walks in. She asks Walter, what's with that guy? Oh, he's Lou Filerman. He's new here. Hey, your coffee stain looks like Fidel Castro. Elaine just smiles and says, you've been an enormous help. Ba 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 ba, boom ba dum boom 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 boom. We got a Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection. It's been a while. I actually already knew this before I did the IMDb search to confirm it, but I knew it. This actor who plays Lou Filerman, his name is Brent Hinkley, and he appeared on an episode of Gilmore Girls, Season 3, Episode 9, A Deep Fried Korean Thanksgiving. That's the title of the episode. And he played one of Jackson's relatives, sort of his hillbilly relatives who are so excited that Jackson's deep frying a turkey. I believe he calls the turkey a gobbler. He's really funny in that episode. In fact, it's a small role. He's got just like a handful of lines, but he does a really good job playing a very drunk hillbilly excited about deep fried turkey and then eventually deep frying anything they can find. And fun fact, A Deep Fried Korean Thanksgiving was actually the first episode of Gilmore Girls I ever watched. I was unemployed. Gilmore Girls was on ABC Family in syndication. And yeah, no shame here. I was on the couch a lot, depressed about being unemployed, and caught this episode. And thus began my obsession with Gilmore Girls. Okay, back to my other obsession, Seinfeld. My take on this scene, I like it. It's a funny way to introduce Elaine's story. Lou is such a weirdo. And then that exchange with Walter really cracks me up. And the last line is great with the, you've been an enormous help. I mean, Elaine's just always surrounded by unhelpful dudes. Next, we're in Monks. George tells Jerry that he ran over some pigeons. How many? Whatever they had. Miranda thinks I'm a butcher. And he asks Jerry, don't we have a deal? It's not my fault. Jerry agrees. The pigeons get out of the way of their cars and we'll look away on the statue defecation. George is all fired up. Yeah, we did have a deal. He's blaming the pigeons. So Miranda's cooled on you. I'm getting nothing. Jerry's like, yeah, me too. Really? I thought you and Celia were sleeping together. He says, yeah, the sex is wild, but she has this toy collection that she won't let me play with. George scoffs. I don't understand women. Jerry warns. Here comes one. And that woman is Elaine. She sits next to George. He notices her coffee stain. Aunt Garfunkel? She twists it. No, Castro. And she says it's all because of this creepy new guy at work. He just sneaks up on you. Jerry calls him a sidler. Elaine agrees. She really likes that term. Yeah, he's a real sidler. And that you never hear him coming. It happened again later in her office. She was making cup of soup singing that song from The Lion King. Hakuna Matata? Elaine says, I thought I was alone. That doesn't make it right. My take on this scene, some really fun physicality by JLD here. Yay, physicality. You know how much I love that. I love how excited she gets when Jerry coins that term, sidler. She's very like, yes. And the way she says it and that little twitch of her eye, it's not quite a wink. It's like almost, she's so like passionately declaring this guy a sidler, it like causes that right eye to just twitch. It's just genius. And like everything JLD does physically, it just gives it that little something extra that takes it to the next level. And such a Jerry moment to give her a hard time about Hakuna Matata. I do wish we got to see the second Seidel instead of Elaine talking about it. Seeing Elaine making that cup of soup and singing Hakuna Matata. What a treat that would have been. All right, next we are in Jerry's hallway. Jerry and Elaine are walking up to his door, and he's still on the Hakuna Matata part of her story, but he says it's not nearly as embarrassing as the cup of soup. And she's like, would you just let it go? We hear Kramer calling from his apartment. They go into his place and they enter and see that he's set up the entire Merv Griffin set. Jerry's like, how did you get this in here? Oh, you just bring it in sideways and hook it. Where are you going to sleep? Oh, backstage. Elaine notices that the chair smells like garbage. And Kramer rationalizes this by saying, well, the stars in the 1970s were not as hygienic as they appeared on TV. Not that it came out of a dumpster or anything. Jerry hears his phone, and on his way out, Kramer tells him, well, we'd love to have you back anytime. And then Kramer goes right into host mode. He says, Elaine Benes, it's great to have you. She sits down in the garbage chair. And Kramer says, is it possible that you're even more beautiful than the last time I saw you? She laughs, all flattered, leaning into him like she's on a talk show. My take, any scene on the Merv Griffin set is going to be tops in my book. Just an FYI for the rest of this episode. We get some JLD laugh acting. That flattery just makes her forget that she's in a stinky ass chair. So Elaine. Next, we're in the park. George notices a few pigeons on the sidewalk, all pecking away at the ground. He thinks for a second and then he just runs at them. But he ends up trampling them. And George yells, we had a deal! Next, we're in the Peterman office. Elaine enters his office with the copy that he wanted. He needs a moment because he's reading the most fascinating article about the most fascinating people of the year. And done. He grabs the papers from Elaine. He says, sorry, I needed this so quickly. He says, it must have been an awful lot of work. Thanks a lot, you two. Elaine's confused, but then she discovers that Lou has sidled up right behind her. My take, this is a funny scene. Most of the comedy comes from J. Peterman. I love the and done. That is said in our house quite a bit. Whenever we finish something, and done. You should try it. I'm telling you, it's delightful. JLD is so great at double takes, and that goofy-ass smile on Lou's face, it's just like 2 episodes in a row of Elaine being around really creepy guys. First, The Wiz, and now Lou Filerman. All right, next we're on the Merv Griffin set. Jerry is telling Kramer how after 3 dates, he still hasn't been able to play with the toys at Celia's. Interesting, Kramer says. Again, total host mode. Someone told me you were not happy with your toys growing up. Yeah, that was me. Apparently Jerry didn't have a G.I. Joe. He had an Army Pete. It was made of wood and he would swell and split in the rain. Kramer looks at his fake audience. We all know how painful that can be. Jerry's just like, what the hell? Elaine enters looking for Jerry. Kramer is so excited. He shoves Jerry down a chair like she's the next guest. She tells Jerry the Seidlers really chapping her hide. Kramer interrupts and tells her, we're talking in this direction, like towards him. She says, well, he's getting credit for work I did. He's going to Seidel me right out of a job. Kramer asks, for people who may not know, Seideling is what? Kramer, what is wrong with you? Elaine says. He's confused. She says, for starters, you're looking at note cards. She turns to Jerry and tells her plan that she's going to Seidel the Seidler. Jerry's like, you stomp around like a Clydesdale. Then she pulls out of her bag her plan. She says, wrestling shoes, and giggles. And then Kramer turns to his fake audience, only in New York. And then George enters. Once again, Kramer is so excited. His next guest has arrived. He puts on this intro music on his tape recorder. He leads George to that first chair, once again shoving Jerry and Elaine down. He laughs, points at George. I mean, George is like, what the hell? He's so confused. Turn music off. Little callback to the bus tour. So the music stops. George says, well, it happened again. What happened? Jerry asks. I'll ask the questions, Kramer says. And then he just repeats Jerry, what happened? George tells them how he stomped a bunch of pigeons in the park. They didn't move. Kramer does not like this content for his show. He says, let's change the subject. Now, you and Jerry dated for a while. What was that like? Oh, and then Kramer looks down. Wrong card. George continues, I don't get these birds. They're breaking the deal. They've decided to ignore me. So they're just like everyone else, Jerry jokes. Kramer laughs at this so hard, decides it's a good time to take a short break. He puts on some break music and he eats a few chips, takes a swig of some Diet Coke, burps, and says, okay, we're back. My take. Big declaration here. This is my favorite scene of the entire series. Yes, I said it. Big moment. But Michael Richards is a master here. What an incredible performance as a fake host on a fake set. It's so Kramer. I mean, he really does keep this whole scene going, just like a host would have to. It's all so brilliant. And besides Michael Richards, everyone else's reactions, they really also make the scene so hilarious. When I did my first watch of the episode for the podcast, my husband sat down and watched with me, and we both hadn't seen this episode in so long. And my husband literally almost spit out his drink during the scene, like multiple times. It's so brilliant start to finish. It holds up. It's so incredibly good. Now, speaking of reactions, we see Elaine's story moving forward, her plan to sidle the Seidler with wrestling shoes. And after Kramer says, only in New York, the JLD's expression, she sort of does another double take, which she's so good at. And it's just perfect that she squints her eyes and looks out to look who the hell he's talking to. I love that moment. And honestly, I really could go on and on about this scene, but I'll just say that it's pretty much perfect in my eyes. The entire ensemble is stellar, with a special shout out to Michael Richards once again, who just knocks it out of the park. Also, I always wait for that moment of that burp at the end. Okay, we're back. And you can see Jason Alexander starting to break. It never gets old. Okay, next we're in George's car. George and Miranda are driving, and he points out how the bank clock is off by 8 minutes. Why don't you just run over it, too? Zing. George sees a pigeon in the road and is terrified he's going to kill it. So he swerves violently. George, what are you doing? He tells her how he swerved to miss the pigeon. I saved that pigeon's life. What pigeon? You ran right into that squirrel. Miranda gets out of the car in a panic, and George claims, well, we have no deal with them. Next, we're in Celia's apartment. She and Jerry are snuggling on the couch watching TV. And Jerry reaches over to the toy shelf and starts playing with the little green army men. Celia notices and gets so mad. Those hands, they never stop. I'm sorry, Jerry says. He asks, hey, do you have any booze? What say you and I get ripped? She's like, no, I actually have a headache. Can you just get me some aspirin? So we see Jerry at her medicine cabinet. There are 2 medications for headaches, one that causes drowsiness. So, of course, he selects that one with a little twinkle in his eye. All right, next we're in Peterman's office. Lou is turning in some copy to Jay Peterman, who says, oh, this looks like a lot of words in record time. He's very impressed with both of you. And Lou's sort of surprised. He looks behind him and there's Elaine, so smug, and says, thank you, and sits down. Unfortunately, I'm also disgusted. This is incoherent drivel, a total redo. And I'm assuming I need it right away. Elaine's like, oh God, well, I guess we'll just have to. And then she looks and sees that Lou has sidled away, leaving her alone. She grabs the papers. Oh, just give me that. My take, well, the sidling of the Seidler backfires on Elaine. So not only is Lou creepy, he's also a terrible copywriter. What is any redeeming quality about Lou here? And I do like that smug Elaine moment with the thank you. She is so incredibly proud of herself. Those wrestling shoes helped her sidle. Next, back at Celia's apartment, Celia is passed out on the couch and Jerry is having a ball playing with multiple toys. G.I. Joe is in his frogman suit. Back to base, Joe. All right, next we're at the vet clinic. Miranda has forced George to bring the injured squirrel to the vet. The vet says that the squirrel has suffered massive trauma. We could try to save him, but it will be costly and they'll have to send away for some very tiny instruments. What are the other options? George asks. Well, we could put him down for about 80 cents. Miranda swats George at that suggestion. George, I'm just curious, he says. He turns to the vet and says, we want you to do everything you can. The vet warns that he's not going to be the same, you know. Yeah, I know. George is like, I cannot believe I'm doing this. Next, back on the Merv Griffin set, George is sharing the squirrel drama with Jerry, Kramer, and Newman. He says that they're flying instruments in from El Paso. El Paso, Kramer says. I spent a month there one night, and Newman laughs so hard. Jerry's so annoyed, he asks what Newman's doing there. Kramer explains, take some pressure off of him. This is referencing how some of those talk show hosts did have these kind of sidekicks. Johnny Carson had Ed McMahon, Conan O'Brien had Andy Richter, so it was kind of a common thing. Kramer continues his interviewing with Jerry. You have a young lady in your life. Jerry says, yeah, and she has this amazing toy collection, and I finally got to play with them last night. Ooh, sounds like things are going well. Do I hear wedding bells? Are you married right now? Newman interrupts. Kramer does not like that. Newman? Well, Jerry confesses, well, she doesn't know about the toys. I gave her the wrong medicine and she sort of passed out. Tells George about this old football game that she has that they loved. And George is like, come on, you got to get me over there. Kramer is so appalled. You drugged a woman just to take advantage of her toys? Let's pause for a moment. Newman starts the music and Kramer scolds Jerry to clean it up when he's on his set. Newman says, I told you he was a risk. Jerry says, oh, like he's not carrying you and has for years. Newman yells back, well, that story stunk worse than these chairs. I like that line. Kramer breaks it up and says, we're back. All right, next we're in Elaine's office. She's called Lou in there and tells him, you've got a lot of potential. You're very spontaneous, symmetrical. And she spins around and he's right there. And you're very quick, aren't you? It's just that you're, and she points to her mouth. He says, my dead tooth? No, you're, bleh. Oh, my breath. And she indicates, yeah, it's terrible. What should I do? She tells him not to go anywhere without these and gives him a little pack of Tic Tacs. Thanks, Elaine. You're such a swell lady. He walks out and we hear the rhythmic rattle as he walks, and Elaine is so happy. My take, this is a funny scene. I like the exchange. I'm not sure why she couldn't just say the words, your breath stinks, but I do like that dead tooth moment. Nothing is getting better about Lou. It just keeps getting worse. And the little satisfied smile by Elaine when she hears the rattling. Very funny and adorable. Next, we're in Celia's apartment. Jerry and George are giving Celia wine, turkey, and heavy gravy. What's that stuff in turkey that makes you sleepy? Tryptophan, they both say. I think. Apparently, George brought some tapes of his boyhood trip to Michigan. 4 hours. Cut to Celia passed out from all the wine and turkey, and George and Jerry are having a blast playing with the toys. Next, back to the Merv Griffin set. Newman is telling some boring-ass story about wax beans. Ugh, officially bottomed out. They got no guests, so Kramer thinks they need a new format. Let's shut down and retool. He unplugs the lights, and they're sitting there in the dark for a few seconds. Newman suggests a guest host. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Next, back at the vet. Doctor, how's the squirrel? Is he dead? No, the vet says the instruments arrived just in time. Would you like to visit him? Yes, he would, Miranda says. So George goes into the squirrel recovery room. The vet says, you have 30 minutes. George is like, what the fuck, 30 minutes? He says, squirrel? The vet comes back into the room asking George what time he's picking him up. What's that? Tells him that they're discharging the squirrel tomorrow, and we think he'd recover better at home. He has no home. He's a squirrel. Your home, Mr. Costanza. Then he gives him a bunch of complicated instructions to care for the squirrel at home. Next, we're at Monk's. Jerry says, well, maybe it'll be fun having a pet. George points out it's not a pet. It's a wild invalid. And it know that I tried to kill it. It's going to gnaw my brain out in my sleep. Kramer enters and he tells Jerry to come by the set and that he's got a new format, edgy and youthful. Plus, I got Jim Fowler from Animal Kingdom. What? Well, apparently Kramer practically raised his kids. George is excited. Oh, he's a zoo guy. Can bring in the squirrel. 2 animal acts in one show? What is this, amateur hour? He tells George, maybe another time, and Kramer exits. George says, I gotta get to Fowler. I know he'll take the squirrel off my hands. It's practically bionic. Hey! Elaine startles Jerry. She's sidled up, and she's so happy the problem is solved. Lou is a human maraca with the Tic Tacs. George mentions how his fingers are cramped from playing that football game. Elaine is appalled. You took him to Celia's? What? It's a victimless crime. What about the woman who's been drugged and taken advantage of? Elaine thinks it's unconscionable. George mentions how he saw a whole Weeble village behind the Easy Bake Oven. Elaine is so excited. Easy Bake Oven? My take, I love that Elaine has just started sidling, especially when she sidles Jerry. It's very funny. We're sort of carrying over the whole sneaky business with her. I like that. JLD is such a master at the quick emotion flip. She goes from being so appalled at Jerry for what he's done to Celia, and now with George in tow, taking him over there while she's passed out. But as soon as she hears about that Easy Bake Oven, it's all out the window. As we see in the next scene at Celia's apartment, we have a quick cut to Elaine, Jerry, and George all playing with Celia's toys. She's passed out in the background at the table. We see the wine and turkey are there. Elaine has made cupcakes in the Easy Bake Oven. Who wants cupcakes? George says, me. That batter is over 30 years old, Jerry says. Also, I love the visual here that they're all like sitting down on the floor. They're just like kids. It's so great. We also hear the home videos in the background. Why is your father giving a tour of a rest stop? George says, oh, look away. This is where they change me. You're like 8 years old. 7.5. My take, really funny quick scene. Elaine is all in now on the playing against Trope again. For a hot second, we had Elaine as the killjoy female character in Jerry's plot, but then we see her true self emerge, and she's just as juvenile as the guys. I love that. Going against Trope is my favorite thing. And gross. George wore diapers at 7.5. Bull. All right, next we're in Elaine's office. Elaine is having lunch at her desk and she's shaking out some Tic Tacs into her hand. And Jay Peterman comes to the door. That noise! He's so upset. He's been hearing that noise everywhere and absolutely hating it. That infernal rattling sound in my office, in the hallway, even in the men's room. Shame on you, Elaine. And she tells him, no, Mr. Peterman, that wasn't me. It reminds him of the Haitian voodoo rattle torture. You haven't gone to their side, have you? No, Mr. Peterman. He tells her if he hears one more rattle, just one, you're out on your can. And if you are undead, I'll find out about that too. Well, Elaine needs to find Lou. She hears the rattling in the hallway. She runs out to find him. She's following the sound, and she finally finds him and pushes him into the break room. She says, we have to talk. Oh, right. He takes out the Tic Tacs, but then she grabs it, stops it from shaking. She says, bad voodoo. You got to stop using these. Why? Because they're turning your teeth green? I only buy the white ones. Okay, then your teeth are green for another reason. She tells him to just use mouthwash. I can't. It burns my cankers. So that means no Banaka either. She's like, all right, just chew gum. I hate gum. He says the only kind of gum he liked came in the Mickey Mouse gumball machine, and they stopped making that 20 years ago. Well, Stinky, today's your lucky day. My take, this is such a silly story, but I really don't mind it. Unlike the last couple of plots for Elaine, this one moves along. It heightens nicely. It's not stagnated. It's not like one of those stories like I felt with The Wiz, where it's like once it's revealed he's the Wiz and she doesn't like it, it kind of just stays there. There's really nowhere to go. But this one it kind of goes back and forth. She thinks she has a solution, but then it gets thwarted for different reasons. So I think it's a really good plot. It's silly, but structured really well. JLD is also so adorable in this episode. I love that little running around the office looking for him in that suit in her little updo. She's just too cute. And also in this scene, we find out that Lou Filerman has cankers because of course he does. Oh, and that Stinky line at the end is always really well delivered. Well, Stinky, today's your lucky day. All right, next we're on the Merv Griffin set. We have Kramer, Newman, Jerry, and, well, Jim Fowler's there. He's also wondering, where are the cameras? Kramer starts with Jerry. Now, you drugged a woman in order to play with her toy collection. How do you feel about that? Jerry says he feels great. He's done it a few more times. Kramer has a surprise, and he brings out Celia. Ooh, she is so pissed. What kind of sick, twisted creep are you? And Jerry's like, what is she doing here? Oh, it's a new format, Scandals and Animals. So now Kramer's clearly gone from like trying to be Johnny Carson to now he's Jerry Springer, basically. Celia starts telling Jerry off. You think you can drug me and play with my toys? You got another thing coming, buddy. Go, girl, Newman says. Jerry retorts with, well, what kind of woman drinks an entire box of wine? Ooh. George enters and he tells Jim Fowler that the squirrel he has in a baby Bjorn attached to him is a miracle of modern science. Jim Fowler has a hawk and he warns George, hawks and squirrels don't get along. Well, Kramer likes how spicy this could be. It's perfect for his new format. And he says, yeah, George, bring him over. No, you idiot, Jim Fowler says. Hawks eat squirrels. Then the hawk starts flying towards George and we hear chaos ensue. Next, Red Monks. Kramer says the whole set was destroyed. The squirrel kept scurrying and the hawk kept clawing. And we see George is all scratched up. At least we know the prosthetic squirrel hips work. Sorry about the set. Kramer's actually a little relieved. It was a grind. I'm not sure I was ready to have my own talk show set. Miranda enters all stern. She tells George she got the nut bread. Let's go. And walks off. So the squirrel's going to make it? Jerry asks. Yeah, he's sleeping in my bed and I'm on the couch. Couch? So you're still getting nothing. He sees some pigeons out the window as he's getting out of the booth, and George tells him to laugh it up. I'm getting in my car now, and last I checked, we had no deal. We cut to Celia's place. Elaine and Lou are there. Celia tells Elaine, I'm so glad you called. I really needed to talk to someone. Elaine says, hey, I dated Jerry too. I know what a monster he could be. More wine and turkey. Celia looks at Lou. Who's he? Oh, he's nobody. Let me top that off for you, and fills her wine glass. My take, it's a nice conclusion to the plot. I forgot this happens. I was kind of preparing in my notes to be like, oh, why didn't they close off this plot for Elaine and Lou? I think maybe they don't show it in syndication or on Netflix. But anyway, I'm glad that they had this little scene. Elaine is just as bad as Jerry. She's willing to have Celia pass out from the wine and turkey in order to get what she wants. And also, you have to question Celia here. She hasn't made the connection yet. She already knows this is what Jerry did. Anyway, Celia's not too bright. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Hi, I'm Lou Filerman. I'm new here. And by here, I mean the world of gum. Introducing Kenker's Gumballs. Gumballs that will freshen your breath without hurting your cankers. A little about me. I used to be a really bad copywriter. I would write just incoherent drivel. So after I wrote some really bad copy for a catalog full of typos and inaccuracies, I got fired. And also subsequently, a lawsuit was brought against me for being undead. After I got through all of that, I decided to go after my passion for canker-friendly gum. Kenker's Gumballs come in several flavors: mint, and really, really mint. And with our time-released formula, the flavor will reveal itself when you least expect it. No matter the level of your awful breath, Kenker's Gumballs mask that stink, with your cankers being none the wiser. For a limited time, you will receive an authentic Haitian rattle with your purchase. Kenker's Gumballs. They'll sneak up on you. And we're back. All of the extras on the DVDs was mostly about the whole Merv Griffin set and all of that experience. There wasn't anything too specific with Elaine and JLD. She was interviewed, and of course, they all were just talking about that scene where they're all there on the set. The scene that I said was my favorite of all time, and just how incredibly strange, hilarious, and fun it was to shoot. So let's move on to Greg's Sack Lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor, and he sends us a sack full of his thoughts every week. So let's dig into the sack. His overall thoughts. He says, Jerry takes a page out of Bill Cosby's book and starts drugging women in this final season. Oh, God. Oh, I know. Ugh. A lot of the stories here are just downright silly, but Elaine's is the one with the storyline I like the best. We finally are back in the office with her, which is always such a fun dynamic, and with yet another troublesome coworker. I love the term sidler and use it all the time to this day, as I worked with someone who actually did this. You'd be sitting at your desk and look up, and she'd be standing there as if appearing from thin air. Oh my gosh, Greg has firsthand experience with the sidler? Oh, I'm trying to think if I ever have. I think oddly enough, your kids, when they're really little and they've got their little feet, and if there's carpet involved, sometimes you don't hear them coming. I know little kids can sidle you and scare the shit out of you, and I'm sure it happened to me a few times. But with an adult, like with you, Greg, that is very creepy. Was she wearing wrestling shoes? I have to ask. Yes, this is a very silly episode. Totally agree. I love all of the storylines. I do agree that Elaine's is really, really strong. I don't know if it's the best. I think I'll have to go with the Merv Griffin set being the best one, but I'll get more into that in a few minutes. Next in Greg's sack, I find his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, Elaine gets a lot of fun moments here, reminiscent of dealing with past coworkers played by Rob Schneider and Molly Shannon, or the woman who thought she was Suze. This time it's Lou with the teeth, who I distinctly remember from the movie Falling Down, which I love. I love every interaction with him because it doesn't even take much from him to bother her. And it doesn't even take that much for him to be funny. The guy just looks funny. Agreed. I feel like he looks like the Mad Magazine. Is it Alfred E. Newman? I don't know. The kid with the gap and the freckles on Mad Magazine. I think Lou Feilerman looks very similar to him. Next, Greg says, all of the bits on the Merv Griffin set are just foolishness, but I still laugh at how Kramer tries to maintain the talk show format. Why are they even at his place? They're never at his place. But what I like in this is that we are getting all four together. Sure, they're just talking about their problems du jour, but it's an interesting way to do it, and it takes them out of the diner or Jerry's place. Totally. I love the new visual of it and the new format, for lack of a better term, because it is a different way for them to have the same conversations that they'd have around a table in a booth at Monk's or in Jerry's apartment, sitting on the couch. So it's just such a cool way to present the typical stuff they'd be talking about, but in a really weird and silly visual of it. Also, fun fact, this is one of the episodes where we never see Jerry's apartment once. Greg goes on to say, my favorite Elaine moment is probably when she confronts Lou about the sidling. Her reaction to everything is so hilarious, especially her face when he says, my dead tooth? Convincing him to carry the Tic Tacs is genius, and I like how it backfires on her like things always do with Peterman. And then I love later when she tries to get Lou to stop with the Tic Tacs, and he says that mouthwash hurts his cankers. JLD's recoil to that cracks me up. Oh my gosh, of course. Yes, that scene is really, really funny. And to your point, yeah, everything's backfiring on Elaine, which I think is why, like I said earlier, this plot works so well. It just keeps she needs to be on her toes this entire episode. And I bet it's comfortable to be on her toes in those wrestling shoes. Next, Greg says, while not an Elaine moment, I crack up every time Newman says, you go girl, on the talk show set. Do kids today even know the 90s talk show vocabulary? As someone who watched a lot of Jenny Jones in my college years, this always gets a laugh out of me. Oh my gosh, totally. It was like a regular thing. I don't know if I could stomach those talk shows now because it's just like, let's find the trashiest people and give them an hour to just inundate us with trashiness. I guess you're right. I said Jerry Springer earlier. That might be a little extreme. You're right. It's more of a Jenny Jones, Ricky Lake type format. Oh my gosh. And yes, actually, I just thought of this. I actually was so mad at the Jenny Jones show because for so long in Detroit, they would show The Tonight Show, and then they would show an episode of Jenny Jones, and then they'd show Conan O'Brien's talk show. And it was so irritating when usually in most places it would go Tonight Show and then Conan's show, like back to back. But for whatever reason in the Detroit area, they're like, let's just put it off another hour. And I'm a huge Conan O'Brien fan, so it always really irritated me. I'm like, stupid fucking Jenny Jones. I want to watch Conan. Anyway, that just reminded me of that. Thank you, Greg. Next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. He says, George's pigeon and squirrel thing is downright ridiculous. Like you would pay for surgery for a squirrel. I'm sorry, I'm an animal lover, but unless it's someone's pet, I'm paying for no vet bills. I wanted more of Elaine and the Seidler than I did of George, his unrealistic girlfriend, and the squirrel. Something else about Lou could have been played up more, specifically him getting credit for her work. They didn't make him out to be doing this intentionally, except when his work is deemed bad by Peterman and Elaine has to fix it. Lou either needed to be completely naive or vindictive and strategic, but they left it kind of ambiguous. Elaine following him to find out if he sidles outside of the office or if it's just something he's doing in an attempt to get her position or something else like that I would have liked. The threat of her employment always comes from her own doing, and I just would have liked that changed up this time. Oh, that's so interesting. I agree. The squirrel pigeon thing is stupid. It, like when I was talking about plots that kind of stagnate, I think George gets that one in this episode where it's like, okay, the pigeons don't get out of your way. We've established that. So now they did heighten it a bit with the squirrel. And yeah, just dump Miranda. She's so annoying and irritating. And she's holding out sex. So that's literally the only reason George is doing this. But you know what? It tracks with George's character as well. He'll do anything so that he can have sex with a woman. But yeah, I agree. It's probably the most ridiculous. I was about to say it's probably the most ridiculous, but it's like, no, we also have someone who set up an old talk show set in their house. But I think that's a really good idea as well, with having a little bit more of the Lou Filerman character rounded out, because yeah, it is ambiguous. I'm like, does he know what he's doing? Or is he just this like, I'm Lou Filerman, I'm new here. Like, I think it's probably the latter. I don't think he is trying to be vindictive. But yeah, it would have been fun to get that clarified. I agree. And finally, in Greg's sack are his other thoughts. He says, "It always is weird to me that Jerry's girlfriend asks him to get her an aspirin in her own apartment. Not saying she deserves to be drugged, but would you not just get your own pills, lady? Also, I just sort of realized this is all sort of commentary on men not understanding that no means no. The epiphany just hit me that this isn't about playing with the toys at all. Only took me 25 years to get it. While I don't condone this behavior, once I saw the Etch-a-Sketch, I immediately wanted to play with one." Well, I'm not going to shame you, Greg. You know, sometimes it takes me a while to catch on to things. Actually, that happened just recently. Now I can't remember what it was, but I was like, oh, this is what they meant. But yeah, I said no. You know, we get that from her earlier. And those hands, they never stop. You know, that's another clue. Also, the way they phrase it, to take advantage of her toys. So you know what? No shame, Greg. You got it now. So that's what's important. And Etch-a-Sketch. I always thought I wanted to play with Etch-a-Sketches, but I would just end up getting really frustrated because I could never really do anything except make squares. And sometimes I'd make like a spiral square, like a little spiral, but in a square shape, because I don't know how to do a curve in an Etch-a-Sketch. I'm not that skilled. Greg goes on to say, "I totally caught a blooper in this. When Kramer goes to break on his show and eats the chips and drinks the Diet Cola and then burps, you can totally see Jason Alexander breaking. And then it quickly cuts to a different angle and he's stone-faced. I seldom see these things, so just wanted to note it." Oh, yeah. Again, not to shame you, but I've noticed that from the beginning. I don't know why I happen to be looking at Jason Alexander's face, but I've seen that for years. And like I said earlier, I look forward to it every time. I always look at him, just starting to lose it. Lastly, Greg says, one last thing. I still don't find Jay Peterman funny. Well, Greg, I don't even know what to say to that, because I think he's brilliant. Thank you so much for sending in your thoughts this week, Greg. We always enjoy them. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. Moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. I love that laugh with Kramer on set. That first time she sits down on the garbage chair and just leans towards him and laughs. Like, I think I like it so much. First, of course, JLD's laugh acting. Masterful. I like that there's sort of this buy-in, like, oh, she gets it. She's like, I'm going to be like a guest on your show. Of course, later she kind of goes back and is like, what the hell are you doing? But anyway, I really love that moment laughing with Kramer as he's playing host. And I really like the shame she feels when Jerry points out, Hakuna Matata? I thought I was alone. That part always gets me. And my final notes. You know, this is one of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld. It has a very solid plot for Elaine, good amount of silliness, and it's not boring. Like I said, always heightens. She's got to be on her toes the entire time, constructed so well. I always like when Elaine is at work, just like Greg said. I mean, it's a great work plot. Something about her in the office, that dynamic is really fun because there's always some kind of coworker getting in her way, and it never gets old. It's so nice to see that she has an episode with no boyfriend drama. We don't need to see that every time. So a work thing, always enjoy it. We do get some crossover with the plots. Everyone gets to either play with Celia's toys. Everyone's on the Merv Griffin set. It's great. So I like that the dovetailing actually does happen. We see everyone overlap. Like Greg said, when all four of them are together, that's when all the magic happens. I don't think I have a scene swap idea. I do agree with Greg. The squirrel pigeon thing, that could have been shaved down quite a bit to get a little bit more Lou Filerman. And lastly, I love this hair on Elaine. JLD can really pull anything off, but this little updo was a refreshing change, just like that red lip last week. I even made a TikTok about it. I love that red lip, but we get the updo and, it's just little things like this that really can dazzle the eye. And JLD dazzles my eyes all the time. I don't mean to sound creepy like The Wiz or Lou Filerman, but you know what I'm saying. I love JLD. And I think that's all I can say about the Merv Griffin Show. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, Elaine Benes Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.